The Broken Princess. The Zalvari Empire had controlled the Andera sector for 15,000 years, and in all that time, no crisis had threatened them like this one. Their people were dying out, not from war or plague, but from something far more insidious, their own genetics. Princess Seraphina stood at the window of her tower chamber, her purple skin gleaming softly in the light of 3 setting suns. Her people had always been proud of their distinctive coloring, the deep violet hue that marked them as the galaxy's most ancient civilization, but what good was beauty when their wombs remained empty? For 3 centuries, fewer and fewer Zalvari children had been born. The noble families had bred only among themselves for millennia, keeping bloodlines pure, keeping their heritage untainted by lesser species, and now they paid the price for that arrogance. Seraphina was 26 in standard years, though her people measured time differently. She had silver-white hair that fell in waves past her shoulders and eyes the color of amethyst. By every measure of Zalvari standards, she was perfection itself, but perfection meant nothing when the medical scanners showed the same result every time: incompatible, unable to conceive, barren. She had watched her 3 older sisters marry powerful lords, had watched them try for years to produce heirs, had watched them fail one by one and disappear to distant estates, forgotten by court society, written out of history as if they had never existed. Now her time had come. The human ship arrived on a morning when storm clouds gathered over the capital city. It was called the Horizon, and it carried diplomats from something called the United Earth Coalition. Humans were newcomers to space travel, barely 400 years since their first clumsy attempts to leave their home world. To the Zalvari who remembered the formation of stars, humans were practically infants. Seraphina watched the vessel land with distaste. It was ugly and functional, all sharp angles and exposed machinery. There was no elegance to it, no artistic vision, just brutal efficiency. What kind of species built such things? She found out that afternoon when her father summoned her to the throne room. Emperor Valerian sat upon a throne carved from a single massive crystal, mined from the heart of their home world. He was ancient even by Zalvari standards. His purple skin had faded to a pale lavender with age, but his eyes remained sharp and calculating. Standing before him was a human male. Seraphina studied him with carefully hidden interest. He was tall for his species, with broad shoulders and skin a warm tan color, so different from her violet complexion. His hair was dark brown with touches of silver at the temples, cut in a practical military style. His eyes were a deep brown, warm and intelligent. He wore a formal uniform of navy blue with medals across his chest, and when he noticed her watching, he met her gaze without flinching. "This is Dr. James Chen," her father announced. "He leads the human diplomatic mission. He holds advanced degrees in xenobiology and has served his people with distinction for 20 years. James bowed his head respectfully. "Your Majesty, it is an honor." "And this," the Emperor continued, gesturing toward Seraphina, "is my youngest daughter, Princess Seraphina." "Princess," James said, bowing to her as well. She did not respond. Her heart was already beginning to understand what was coming, and she wanted no part of it. Her father wasted no time. "Dr. Chen, you came seeking technology exchanges and trade agreements. I am prepared to offer you something far more valuable. I offer you my daughter's hand in marriage." The words hit Seraphina like a physical blow. She felt her breath catch, felt her carefully maintained composure crack just slightly. Marriage to a human, to a primitive from a species barely out of their own star system. The humiliation was unbearable. James looked genuinely shocked. "Your Majesty, I'm not certain I understand. Your people have made it clear that you consider humans to be less advanced." "Less advanced, yes," the Emperor agreed calmly, "but your species possesses something mine has lost: genetic diversity, adaptability. Your people breed successfully on every world you colonize. You mix your DNA freely and grow stronger for it. My people have become too refined, too pure. We are dying because we cannot change." He leaned forward slightly. "My daughter has been tested extensively. No Zalvari male can give her children, but your species, your flexible genetics, perhaps you can do what we cannot." Seraphina wanted to scream, wanted to run from the throne room and never return, but she had been trained since childhood in the art of royal composure, so she stood perfectly still, her face a mask of cold indifference, even as her father sold her like livestock to the highest bidder. James was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was measured. "This is not a decision I can make alone. I would need to consult with my government." Of course, Emperor Valerian said smoothly, take whatever time you need, but understand what I offer, a permanent alliance between our peoples, access to Zalvari technology and star charts spanning half the galaxy, a seat for humanity on the High Council, all of this in exchange for one thing. A child, James said quietly. An heir, the Emperor corrected, one who carries both human adaptability and Zalvari heritage, one who could unite our peoples and secure my empire's future. Serafina finally spoke, unable to remain silent any longer. I was not consulted about this arrangement, father. The Emperor did not even look at her. You do not need to be consulted, you need to be useful, this is how you become useful. The words cut deeper than any blade could have. Serafina felt something inside her go cold and hard. She looked at the human, expecting to see triumph or satisfaction on his face. Instead she saw something that made her even angrier. She saw pity. James Chen looked at her with eyes that seemed to understand exactly how she felt, and in that moment, Serafina hated him for it. She did not want his pity, she did not want his understanding, she wanted to be left alone. But that was not going to happen. Her father had decided her fate, and there was nothing she could do to change it. Unexpected kindness. The wedding took place 6 weeks after that first meeting. Earth had said yes, of course they had. The opportunity to ally with the ancient Zalvari Empire was too valuable to refuse. One man's freedom was a small price to pay for humanity's future among the stars. James did not think of himself as a sacrifice, he thought of himself as a scientist doing his duty. He had spent his entire career studying alien biology, trying to understand how different species could coexist. This was simply the most extreme version of that work. But standing in the Grand Temple wearing ceremonial robes that felt strange against his skin, watching thousands of purple-skinned nobles stare at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to disgust, he wondered what he had gotten himself into. Serafina appeared at the far end of the temple, and the assembled crowd fell silent. She wore white robes that shimmered like starlight, her silver hair adorned with crystal ornaments that caught the light. She was breathtaking in a way that seemed almost unreal, and her face showed absolutely no emotion at all. She walked toward him slowly, each step precise and measured. When she reached his side, she did not look at him, her amethyst eyes remained fixed straight ahead. The ceremony was conducted entirely in the Zalvari language. James repeated words he barely understood when instructed, bowed when told to bow, stood still when commanded. He felt like a puppet with invisible strings. When it ended, they were married. Princess Serafina was now his wife. He was now technically a member of the imperial family, at least on paper. The feast that followed was even more uncomfortable. James sat beside Serafina at the high table, eating food that tasted alien and watching dancers perform movements he could not interpret. No one spoke to him except when protocol demanded it, and Serafina did not speak to him at all. When the feast finally ended, servants led them to their new quarters. The chambers were enormous, filled with furniture made from materials James could not identify. A massive bed dominated the sleeping area, covered in silks that probably cost more than his entire annual salary. As soon as the servants departed, Serafina moved to the far side of the room. She stood with her back to him, looking out at the stars through the crystal window. I will fulfill my duty, she said, her voice flat and emotionless. I will share your bed when required, I will attempt to conceive a child, but do not expect anything more from me, human, do not expect warmth or affection. You are here because my father commands it. Nothing more. James sat down on the edge of the bed. He was exhausted from the long day, from weeks of preparation, from the weight of expectations pressing down on his shoulders. I didn't ask for this either, he said quietly. I was a simple researcher before all this. I grew up in a small town called Berkeley. I joined the Space Corps because I wanted to understand the universe. I never expected to end up married to an alien princess. Serafina turned to look at him, her purple face unreadable. Is that supposed to make me sympathize with you? No, James said honestly, I'm just saying we're both in a difficult situation. We didn't choose this, but since we're stuck with each other, maybe we could try to be civil. She made a sound that might have been a laugh, but there was no humor in it. Civil, you want me to be civil to the man who has been given my body as a political bargaining chip? I'm not going to force you to do anything, James said firmly. Whatever happens between us will be your choice. I may be primitive by your standards, but where I come from, we believe in consent and respect. Something flickered in her amethyst eyes. Surprise perhaps, you would refuse to bed me. I would refuse to touch you without your permission, James clarified, there's a difference. She studied him for a long moment, as if seeing him properly for the first time, then she shook her head slowly, you are strange, human. My name is James, I know you know that. I know your name. Then use it, I'm your husband now, for better or worse, the least we can do is use each other's names. Another long pause, then slowly she nodded, very well, James. It was a small victory, but James would take what he could get. Over the following weeks, they developed a careful routine. They shared the quarters but maintained their distance. James slept on a couch in the outer room while Serafina took the bed. They ate meals together in silence, attended required court functions side by side without speaking, and returned to their separate corners each night. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. It started with questions. Serafina began asking about Earth, about humans, about the strange customs of his people. She tried to hide her curiosity behind a mask of cold indifference, but James could see it anyway. He answered honestly. He told her about Earth's oceans and mountains, about cities that stretched to the sky and forests that had stood for thousands of years. He told her about human history with all its wars and mistakes and triumphs. He told her about scientific discoveries and artistic achievements and the endless human drive to explore and understand. And one night, he told her something that changed everything. I read your medical files, he said. They were sitting in the outer room, Serafina reading a data tablet while James worked on a report for Earth Command. She stiffened immediately. Those are private. I know, James said, but I needed to understand what I was getting into, and what I found was interesting. What do you mean? James set down his tablet and looked at her directly. You're not really barren, Serafina. Your body is perfectly capable of carrying children. The problem is compatibility. Your reproductive system has evolved in a very specific direction over thousands of years. It doesn't match well with Zalvari males anymore. Your gene pool has become too narrow. She stared at him. That's not what the doctors told me. Because they only looked at Zalvari biology, James explained. Human doctors looked at it differently. We've studied genetic compatibility across dozens of species. We think human DNA might be compatible with yours in ways that Zalvari DNA no longer is. We're more flexible, more adaptable, our genetics are messy and diverse, and that might be exactly what you need. For a long moment, Serafina said nothing, then James saw something he had never seen before, a tear running down her purple cheek. All my life, she whispered, I've been told that I'm broken, that I'm defective, that I have no value because I cannot produce heirs. You're not broken, James said gently, you're just different, and sometimes different is exactly what's needed. She looked at him with eyes that held a fragile new emotion, something that might have been hope. Love in starlight. 3 months passed, and Serafina began to change in ways she had not expected. It started with small things. She stopped leaving the room whenever James entered. She began sitting closer to him during their silent meals. When he spoke, she actually listened instead of pretending he did not exist. She found herself curious about him in ways that confused her. He was so different from Zalvari males she had known all her life. They were cold and calculating, always measuring the political value of every word and gesture. James was warm and direct. He said what he meant and meant what he said. There was no hidden agenda behind those brown eyes. One evening she asked him about his childhood. James smiled, and Serafina noticed for the first time how his smile transformed his entire face. It made him look younger, softer, more approachable. I grew up near the ocean, he said. My parents were marine biologists. They studied whales and dolphins. I learned to swim before I learned to walk. The ocean was my playground. Ocean, Serafina repeated. We have no such thing on our home world, only crystalline lakes. Then I'll show you pictures, James offered. The ocean is incredible, vast and powerful and full of mystery. Humans have explored space, but we still haven't mapped all of our own oceans. I would like to see these pictures. The word surprised her as much as they surprised him. She had not meant to sound so interested, but it was true. As the weeks continued, they began spending more time together by choice rather than obligation. James taught her games from Earth, simple card games that made her laugh when she won. Serafina taught him the basics of Zalvari music, showing him how to read the harmonic notations that looked nothing like human musical scores. They walked together in the palace gardens when the triple sun set, talking about everything and nothing, discussing philosophy and science and art, and somewhere along the way, Serafina stopped thinking of him as a primitive. She began to see him as a man, a kind man, a patient man, a man who treated her with more genuine respect than any Zalvari male ever had. She also began noticing other things, the way his shoulders moved when he walked, the sound of his laughter echoing off crystal walls, the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her. Feelings stirred inside her that she had been taught to suppress since childhood. Zalvari did not love. Love was weakness, an emotion that clouded judgment and led to poor decisions. Marriage was about duty and bloodlines and political advantage, not feelings. But James made her feel things she could not name, things that frightened and excited her in equal measure. One night, as they sat together watching the twin moons rise outside their window, Serafina made a decision. She reached out and took his hand. James looked at her with surprise but did not pull away. His hand was warm against her cool purple skin, his fingers were rougher than Zalvari hands, calloused from years of fieldwork. "I think," she said slowly, carefully, "that I am ready." He understood immediately what she meant. "Are you sure, Serafina? I don't want you to feel pressured." "I am sure." She met his eyes. "I'm not doing this because of duty or because my father commands it, I'm doing this because I want to, because you have shown me kindness when no one else would, because you make me feel like I matter beyond my ability to produce heirs." James lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "You have always mattered, you've always been worthy of respect and kindness. I'm just sorry it took so long for someone to show you that." What happened that night changed everything between them. James was gentle and patient, letting her set every boundary, asking what she wanted, what she needed, what felt good. No one had ever asked her such questions before, no one had ever cared about her pleasure or her comfort. He touched her purple skin with reverence, tracing the patterns of lighter violet that marked her shoulders and arms, telling her she was beautiful, telling her she was remarkable, and for the first time in her life, Serafina believed it. Their bodies fit together in ways that surprised her, where Zalvari males had always felt wrong somehow, incompatible despite being the same species. James felt right, his warmth against her coolness, his strength balanced with tenderness, his complete focus on her happiness rather than his own satisfaction. When they finally came together, it was with mutual desire and genuine connection. Serafina gasped at the sensation, so different from anything she had experienced before. James held her close, whispering her name like a prayer, moving with her rather than against her. Afterward she lay in his arms, her purple cheek resting against his tan chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. She felt something she had never felt before. She felt safe, she felt valued, she felt loved. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me as a person, not just a vessel for children or a political tool." James kissed the top of her head, his fingers tracing gentle patterns on her shoulder. "You're so much more than that, Serafina. You're brilliant and strong and beautiful. Any man would be lucky to know you." She lifted her head to look at him. "I think I'm falling in love with you, James Chin." His smile was radiant. "I know I'm falling in love with you, Serafina. I think I have been for weeks now." She kissed him then, properly this time, without hesitation or fear, and he kissed her back with equal passion. They made love again that night, slower this time, exploring each other with growing confidence and desire, learning what made the other gasp or moan or laugh with delight. 6 weeks later, Serafina woke feeling strange. There was a flutter in her abdomen, a sensation she had never experienced before. She lay very still, trying to understand what was happening. James stirred beside her. "Are you all right?" "I feel different," she said quietly. "Something is changing inside me." He sat up immediately, concern crossing his face. "Should I call the doctors?" "Yes," Serafina whispered, placing a hand over her lower abdomen. "Yes, I think you should." The medical examination confirmed what Serafina had already begun to suspect. She was carrying a child. The barren princess, the defective daughter, the worthless heir, was pregnant. The doctor, an elderly Zalvari woman named Dr. Nora, stared at the scanning results with disbelief. "It's impossible," she kept saying. your hormone levels, your embryonic development, it's actually happening. James stood beside the examination table, holding Seraphina's hand tightly. The baby is healthy. Perfectly healthy, Dr. Nora confirmed, still sounding shocked. This is unprecedented. In 300 years of fertility crisis, no Zalvari woman has successfully conceived, and now. Now everything changes, Seraphina finished quietly. Dr. Nora nodded slowly. Yes, princess, everything changes. The news spread through the palace like wildfire. The barren princess was carrying the human's child. It was impossible, it was unthinkable, it was a miracle. Emperor Valerian received the news with deep satisfaction. His gamble had paid off spectacularly. Human genetics had accomplished what Zalvari genetics could not. But not everyone was pleased. In the shadows of the palace, darker forces began to stir, and a conspiracy was born. The conspiracy. The news of Seraphina's pregnancy divided the empire. Some saw it as salvation, proof that their dying civilization could be saved through genetic mixing with other species, but others saw it as an abomination, a contamination of the pure Zalvari bloodline. Lord Tavian, the emperor's nephew, stood at the center of the opposition. For decades he had believed the throne would eventually be his. The emperor's daughters were all barren, there were no male heirs, the crown would pass to him when the old man died. Now everything had changed. This half-human child growing inside Seraphina's womb would have a claim to the throne. Worse still, if the hybrid proved healthy and strong, other nobles would rush to arrange marriages with humans and other species. The pure Zalvari bloodline would disappear within a generation. Tavian could not allow that to happen. He gathered the leaders of the purist movement in his private chambers. These were Zalvari who believed their species should remain untainted, who would rather see their civilization die than see it diluted with alien blood. The child must not be born, declared Counselor Vara, an ancient woman with eyes like ice. If this abomination lives, it will be the end of everything we are. The emperor has increased security around the princess, Tavian said. Guards follow her everywhere. Guards can be circumvented, Vara replied with a cold smile. The princess has a new servant, a young woman named Mira. She has served the purist movement since childhood. She will do what is necessary. Tavian considered the risks. If Mira was caught, the investigation would lead back to him, but the alternative was watching a half-breed take the throne that should have been his. Do it, he said finally. The attempt came when Seraphina was in her 7th month. James had been meeting with human engineers across the palace, discussing plans for a new research facility. The meeting ran longer than expected, and by the time it ended, the triple suns were setting. He was walking back to their quarters when the alarms began. The sound cut through the palace like a blade. James broke into a run, his heart pounding with fear. Please let her be safe, he thought desperately. Please let them both be safe. He ran through corridors of blue crystal, pushing past servants and guards. The alarms seemed to grow louder with every step. By the time he reached their chambers, he could barely breathe. A dozen Imperial guards surrounded the door, their weapons drawn. When James tried to push through, they blocked his path. Let me in, he demanded, that's my wife. The princess is safe, one guard said, the threat has been neutralized. James did not care about neutralized threats, he cared about Seraphina. He pushed harder, and something in his expression must have convinced them because they finally stepped aside. The scene inside made his blood run cold. Seraphina sat on the floor, her back against the wall, her silver hair wild and tangled, her robes torn. In her hand she held a crystal blade covered in purple blood. On the floor before her lay her servant Mira. The young woman's throat had been cut, she was very clearly dead. James knelt beside his wife immediately. Are you hurt? Is the baby hurt? Seraphina looked at him with eyes wide with shock. She tried to kill me, she had a poison blade, she was going to stab me in the stomach. She said the half-breed must not be born. But you stopped her. I did not know I could. Seraphina's voice trembled. I did not know I had such violence in me. When she raised that blade toward my child, something happened, something woke up inside me. I took the knife from her and I. She began to shake. James pulled her into his arms and held her tightly. You protected our baby. That's not violence, that's love, that's a mother defending her child. I killed someone, James. You did what you had to do, he said firmly, and our daughter is alive because of your courage." Guards and doctors rushed into the room. They checked Serafina for injuries, checked the baby's heartbeat, cleaned the blood from her hands. Through it all, James stayed at her side, refusing to let go. The investigation that followed revealed everything. Under interrogation, members of the purist movement confessed. They named Lord Tavian as the mastermind. They described meetings and payments and detailed plans. The evidence was overwhelming. Emperor Valorian's rage was terrible to witness. When he learned his own nephew had tried to murder his daughter and grandchild, he showed no mercy. Tavian was arrested along with Counselor Vara and 37 other conspirators. Their trial lasted less than a day. The verdict was death. The executions were public, broadcast across the entire empire so all would understand the price of treason. James did not watch. He stayed with Serafina, who was still recovering from the trauma. "It's over," she said quietly as the executions concluded. "Is it?" James asked gently. "There will be others who think like Tavian did." "Yes," Serafina placed her hand on her swollen belly, "but they will not succeed. I will protect her with everything I have." "So will I," James promised, "always." Their daughter kicked then, strong and healthy, and they both smiled. A new beginning. The labor began on a quiet night when both moons were full. Serafina woke James with a gentle touch on his shoulder. Her face was calm but her amethyst eyes were bright with pain. "It's time," she said simply. They had prepared extensively for this moment. Doctors from both species had been standing by for weeks. Human medical experts had traveled from Earth bringing specialized equipment. This was the first human Zalvari birth in history. No one knew exactly what to expect. James helped Serafina to the medical wing. She walked slowly, stopping when contractions seized her body. She did not cry out. Her Zalvari training held even now. The birthing chamber was filled with doctors and machines. Screens displayed information in languages from 2 worlds. James felt somewhat useless surrounded by so much technology, but he refused to leave Serafina's side. "Talk to me," she gasped as another contraction hit. "Tell me about the ocean." So James talked. He described the Pacific coastline where he grew up, painting pictures with words while his wife fought to bring their daughter into the world. He told her about waves crashing against cliffs, about dolphins leaping through spray, about the endless blue horizon where water met sky. "It sounds beautiful," Serafina whispered. "It is," James agreed, "and someday we'll take our daughter there. She'll feel the sand between her toes and taste the salt air." Hours passed. The labor was longer and harder than anyone expected. The doctors exchanged worried glances that James tried to ignore. He focused on Serafina, on keeping her calm, on reminding her to breathe. "You're doing so well," he told her. "You're so strong. Our daughter is lucky to have you." "I'm frightened," Serafina admitted. It was the first time she had ever said those words aloud. "I know," James said, "I'm frightened too, but we'll get through this together." More hours passed. The triple suns rose and filled the chamber with golden light. Serafina was exhausted, her body trembling with effort, but she kept fighting. And then finally Dr. Nora said the words they had been waiting to hear: "It's time to push." What happened next was a blur of pain and noise and frantic activity, and then suddenly a new sound filled the room, a baby's cry. The cry was strong and loud, echoing off the crystal walls. It was the most beautiful sound James had ever heard. "She's healthy," Dr. Nora announced, holding up a small squirming bundle. "She's perfect." They placed the baby in Serafina's arms. James leaned close, looking at his daughter for the first time. She was smaller than a human baby but larger than typical Zalvari newborns. Her skin was a soft lavender color, a beautiful blend of her mother's purple and her father's tan. Her eyes, when they opened, were silver like Serafina's but with flecks of brown around the edges. A tuft of dark hair covered her head. She was beautiful, she was a miracle, she was theirs. "Hello, little one," Serafina whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Welcome to the universe." James touched his daughter's tiny hand, her fingers wrapped around his thumb with surprising strength. "She's amazing, you're amazing." Emperor Valerian entered the chamber moments later. He walked to the bed and looked down at his grandchild. For a long moment he said nothing, then slowly his thin lips curved into something resembling a smile. "She is strong," he said, stronger than any Zalvari infant I have seen in decades. What will you name her?" "Aurora," James said, "it means dawn in my language, the beginning of a new day." "Aurora," the emperor repeated, "fitting, perhaps this child truly is the dawn of a new age for our people." The news of the birth spread across the empire within hours. A healthy hybrid child had been born, the barren princess had become a mother, human genetics had proven compatible with Zalvari in ways no one had predicted. Within days, messages began arriving from across the galaxy. Other species facing fertility problems wanted to know more. Within a year, 43 formal requests for diplomatic marriages arrived at the United Earth Coalition. Humanity had gone from being newcomers to being valuable partners overnight. 20 years later, Ambassador Aurora stood on the bridge of a diplomatic vessel watching Earth grow larger in the viewscreen. She had her mother's grace and her father's determination. Her lavender skin marked her as something unique, a bridge between two worlds. Behind her, James and Serafina stood hand in hand. James's hair had gone fully gray, but his eyes were still warm. Serafina looked almost unchanged, her people aging far more slowly than humans. "Are you nervous?" Serafina asked. Aurora turned with a smile. "A little, the Terran Council has never hosted a Zalvari ambassador before." "They'll love you," James said, "you're the best of both worlds." "I have the best parents in any world," Aurora replied warmly, "thank you for everything you've taught me." James pulled both his wife and daughter into an embrace. Outside the viewport, Earth waited, blue and green and beautiful. "Show them what you're made of," James whispered, "show them that being different is strength, not weakness." Aurora straightened her robes, her silver-brown eyes shining with determination. "I will, I promise." She walked toward the transport bay, ready to meet her destiny. Behind her, James and Serafina watched their daughter go with pride swelling in their hearts. They had started as strangers, forced together by politics and desperation. They had become partners, lovers, friends, parents. And their daughter would carry their legacy to the stars. The story of humanity among the great powers was just beginning, and it was off to a remarkable start. The end.